All right, guys, so check this out. Have you ever heard of Goldbelly? Okay, so it's this amazing site where you can order the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants all across the country, and they will ship it straight to your door. That's right, these guys will ship you Philly cheesesteaks from Jim's or Pat's in Philly, buffalo wings from the Anchor Bar in Buffalo, and even Kansas City's most legendary barbecue. So, if you're looking to host an epic Super Bowl party, go to goldbelly.com and get free shipping and 20% off your first order with promo code GAMEDAY.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, your twice-weekly check-in between the ginormous Sunday evening episodes of Keeping Karlsson, designed to keep you up to date with fantasy news, takes, and analysis all throughout the fantasy season. I'm your host, Ryan Downey, and I wanted to lead off tonight with a story that rocked the fantasy hockey world on Monday. And no, I'm not talking about the Carson Soucy trade to the New York Islanders. No, Monday's scheduled game between the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Los Angeles Kings was postponed after much of Ohio received at least a foot of snow late Saturday and throughout Sunday, which resulted in Columbus shutting down the roads such that only emergency personnel were allowed to traverse them. That, of course, means that fans and players can't get to the arena where the game is being held, and so the game was postponed. The NHL did announce a makeup date, which will be March 9th in Columbus, with the game time to be announced in the near future, and I'll get back to that in a second. But I just want to vent a little bit here. You know, I think a lot of us went out and added Columbus players for their Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week to help with the horrible streaming week that is just laid out in front of us here. I'm sure a bunch of managers added Los Angeles Kings players for their 5-game week, which is now just a regular old boring 4-game week. And, you know, those of us who roster players like Zach Werenski and Adrian Kempe, like, we lose a very important part of our team for this week. And so, you know, I empathize with a lot of you out there. So how does this affect fantasy managers who went after some of those Los Angeles Kings players? Well, initially, I felt a little bit less confident about Jeremy's Anton Forsberg recommendation from last week's short shifts. However, he did secure the start tonight in Detroit and had an excellent game with 9.6 fantasy points in the cupful. That's Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League format with the win and only 1 goal against on 28 shots, so 27 saves. That's a great night from Anton Forsberg, and you can almost be assured that he will get another game later this week as the Los Angeles Kings have a back-to-back this weekend. Where the skaters are concerned, however, I might be considering moving off the Kings players altogether, since the likelihood of them giving you anything worthwhile from a fantasy standpoint on a busy Thursday, Saturday is pretty low. While Corey Perry and Andrei Kuzmenko did return goals tonight against Detroit, I can't imagine you'd be starting them over other players who might have better deployment, better power play opportunities, and that kind of thing on the busy Thursday, Saturday. So you could probably feel free to cut those guys loose at this point. As for Columbus, they still have those Wednesday and Friday games, so I'd probably hold on just because this is a truly cursed streaming week. Although it is a little hard for me to get too excited about Kent Johnson or Cole Sillinger, to be sure. As for how this impacts the fantasy schedule further downstream, Columbus and LA now both have a Monday-Tuesday back-to-back in the final week of the Cupful regular season, which, shocker, is another bad streaming week with 8 games, 4 games, and 4 games on the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and only 12 on the Sunday. Depending on the starting rotation, it might be a good opportunity to grab an Anton Forsberg, an Elvis Merzlikins, or a Jet Greaves and get them into your schedule to start a pivotal Cupful week. Obviously, my pick would be Anton Forsberg. The previous week actually doesn't look too bad for Columbus either, so maybe whichever one of those Columbus goalies ends up as the starter should get a look for you near the end of February. On to another big story in the NHL this week, and that is Pittsburgh's Bryan Rust, who has been suspended for 3 games for an illegal check to the head against the Vancouver Canucks' Brock Boeser. Yegor Chinakhov looks poised to take Rust's spot on the power play with them splitting reps in practice on Tuesday. Chinakhov's gotten a lot of praise for his shot in particular since arriving in Pittsburgh from the Columbus Blue Jackets, scoring 5 goals in 13 games. So let's see if an uptick in deployment for these next 3 games brings that number up a bit. But there's another topic I find a little bit more interesting than the downstream impact of losing Bryan Rust for 3 games on the Penguins lineup, and that is how Yahoo is planning on implementing his absence in terms of his IR eligibility. Recently, Yahoo had been using the IR susp tag for some players when they get suspended, and indeed, if that were the case, then it would have been perfect timing for a suspension for fantasy managers in a 2-game week for Pittsburgh on super busy days where managers will likely have a replacement on the bench. Unfortunately, this time around, the Yahoo wheel of IR designations landed on a blank square. That is, Rust has been labeled NA and will now be wasting a roster spot for fantasy managers until his return on February 3rd versus the Islanders. So this might have been a good opportunity here to try one of my favorite fantasy tactics, and that is the IR shuffle. And for the uninitiated, let me walk you through the concept of an IR shuffle. Basically, if you have more IR plus players than roster slots, you can go into the future and start those IR players on their scheduled games. The thought is that your IR plus players are going to come back soon, so you get to use your IR plus as kind of a longer bench. The one downside to the IR shuffle is that one cannot make any moves during the IR shuffle. So you'll want to have any streaming strategy taken care of prior to initiating the IR shuffle. Certainly a bit of a missed opportunity with Rust here, but either way, I'm going to present to you now some outjuries that might be able to help you test this niche fantasy hockey strategy. The first potential option I want to bring up is Logan Cooley, who returned to practice with the Utah Mammoth Monday morning to a rousing chorus of stick banging by his teammates, who are certainly looking forward to getting their young star back into the lineup. You remember that 4-goal, 5-point game he had in November? That is certainly preferable to the nothing that Barrett Hayton gives that team offensively in his stead. Cooley was on a 65-point pace prior to his leg injury and will slot nicely back into that top 6 and perhaps allow Utah to stack the top 6 again rather than spread their good offensive players out in a top 9. Fantasy managers are hoping he'll be back as soon as tomorrow, Wednesday, to take advantage of this great off-day schedule for Utah. Either way, they'll get 5 games out of a possible 6 in that long Olympic matchup, so managers with Utah players should look forward to an offensive uptick in that important fantasy week. While we're on the topic of second-line centers making their long-awaited return, we should talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois, who practiced in a regular white jersey and joined his Caps teammates for a contact practice on Monday for the first time. Every other time he skated with the group, it's been during a morning skate and in a non-contact jersey, but he took a few hits and looks to be a bit ahead of schedule, as he was projected to miss 3 to 4 months in mid-November. Head coach Spencer Carberry did say last week he would return after the Olympics, but it's possible the timeline has moved up, so keep an eye on game day tweets for the latest on Pierre-Luc Dubois. Sticking in the center position, the LA Kings are hopeful that Anze Kopitar may play before the end of the trip, but that he wasn't going to play tonight against Detroit. The Kings are on this road trip through the end of Sunday at the end of this 5-game week for them, and then they'll head home. So this might be the perfect opportunity for you to test this IR shuffle if you're one of the people that has Anze Kopitar in your IR+. It was also announced Monday that Gabriel Landeskog and Devon Toews would be skating for the Avalanche in Colorado for practice, so their returns may also be imminent. You could always take the risk on inserting them into the IR shuffle strategy as well. This next one is one you might have to move quickly on this morning when you're listening to this, because I know that Elon is planning on releasing this Wednesday morning. Denton Mateychuk returns Wednesday night versus the Philadelphia Flyers, and he'll be on that second pairing with Ivan Provorov. Mateychuk's ice time is down from his 25-minute peak, but he's proven that he can be a valuable piece of the offense from the back end in Columbus no matter where he plays, and if he can get back up over 20 minutes a night, I am interested in him. At the very least, he's a guy who would work well in your IR shuffle if you implement that soon. And before we head to a quick ad break, the last outjury is one that I want to take the opportunity to vent a little bit about. Linus Ullmark practiced with the Senators on Sunday, and I'm going to preface all of this by saying I'm thrilled for him that he's back and that he's practicing with his teammates again. Glad to see him on the other side of what sounded like a very difficult month for him, and I was very excited to get him back into my lineup this week because he's a volume starter for a team that desperately needs good goaltending, a team that protects their goaltenders very well. I was excited until Travis Green dropped a little tidbit in Morning Skate on Tuesday that made me a little less excited. He said that Ullmark isn't ready yet and that he will let the team know when he's ready. Aw, shucks. Well, I thought to myself, at least he's still on IR, right? Wrong! In the eyes of Yahoo and the NHL, he's in the lineup because he's filling the backup role, which means my entire streaming plan for the week was utterly destroyed. This move cost me Kent Johnson, which, as I mentioned earlier, it's not all that huge of a loss, but still, that's a couple of games that I wish I could have had this week. Why couldn't they just have kept him on IR so I wasn't forced to drop a player for no reason? Don't these teams know that people play fantasy hockey? I'm all worked up now, so I think I need to take a second to cool off before diving into the injury news from Tuesday. You're listening to Short Shifts. Welcome back to Short Shifts. I did some deep breathing, some journaling and reflection, and now I'm ready to return and deliver the injury news that we all found out about on Tuesday. And Thatcher Demko managers might need to do some of that deep breathing because it was announced Tuesday afternoon that Demko would be undergoing hip surgery and that he's being shut down for the rest of the season. You've just got to feel for the guy and for Vancouver fans, I suppose. It's just been a brutal run of injuries for him, and this is a new one compared to the knee injury that he has been struggling through over the past couple of seasons. I actually wonder if there might have been some extra pressure on his hips after compensating for this knee injury for so long. Either way, I'm pretty confident in saying that we've likely seen the best of Thatcher Demko at this point, and folks should probably consider dropping him down their draft boards for the 26-27 fantasy season and beyond. The news for Vancouver, if it's even possible, goes from bad to worse, as Brock Boeser and Zeev Buium have also both been added to IR, retroactive to January 25th, so that means they will miss at least 2 games and are eligible to return over the weekend against Utah on Sunday. Now, usually, when a starting goaltender, the power play quarterback, and a power play forward all exit the lineup, there would be some excitement about who the next man up might be, right? Unfortunately, I'm finding it very difficult to get excited about Kevin Lankinen backstopping the worst team in the NHL, which just got, well, worser. Where the power play is concerned, though, I have a little bit of interest in the replacements, which last we heard was Filip Hronek as the power play quarterback, and Jonathan Lekkerimaki, who was called up from Abbotsford to replace Boeser. Now, Short Shifts listeners will know that I recommended Lekkerimaki last year, and he was a big, fat miss for me, so I won't even be going there, at least not yet. Hronek, however, could be interesting as he provides enough at 5-on-5 to be 96% owned in Cacupful already. And with him likely looking for a way out of town, he should be seizing this opportunity with great enthusiasm. So if he's out there, I would give him a swing. Lekkerimaki might be worth the same swing later in the season when the Canucks finally give up all hope and give the room over to the young guys. And then we can maybe see what Liam Ogren and Jonathan Lekkerimaki look like playing together in the NHL. See if they can replicate some of their great chemistry from the SHL.
The jaw-dropping moments that make hockey, hockey. Experience them all with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Missouri listeners, listen up. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in the Show Me State. New customers, this one's for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, pass-through of per wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright NHL 2025. All rights reserved.
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
Hey guys, finding the perfect gift for the food lover in your life is easy. Thanks to Goldbelly. Goldbelly ships America's most iconic foods straight from world-famous restaurants right to your door. So if you want to treat someone to Joe's Stone Crab from Miami, Franklin Barbecue from Texas, or desserts from famous foodies like Ina Garten or Martha Stewart, Goldbelly has you covered. Just go to goldbelly.com and for a limited time, get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT. That's promo code GIFT.
Now to talk about things that were announced a little closer to game time. Utah was missing Dylan Guenther, who was announced out tonight with a lower body injury against Florida. Hopefully this isn't too long, as a lot of fantasy teams, including my own, are counting on him to keep up his torrid pace. He was playing on the third line, but the Mammoth have now stacked their top six, with Daniil Boot taking the right wing spot on the second line. Utah did prevail over the defending Stanley Cup champions this evening, 4-3, with goals coming from most of the places you would expect it. Nick Schmaltz, Mikhail Sergachev, one from Sean Dursey, which was pretty exciting for him, and one from Barrett Hayton, which is completely just a foreign concept to me. Nothing from Boot, but he did get 3 shots on net, so it's good to see him involved. A player who was not in the lineup tonight, but was added to the roster earlier today for Utah was Dmitry Simashev, who was called up from Tucson after he put up, frankly, a shocking 20 points in 20 games. Now, I don't think any of us are expecting him to replicate that kind of production at the NHL level, but this might be the last time we see Simashev in the AHL for maybe the next 10-plus years, so get used to seeing him on defense for the Utah Mammoth. One of the late roster decisions that was most intriguing to me was Andre Palat being kept out of the lineup tonight in New Jersey for roster-related reasons, and later we found out that he was traded to the New York Islanders for Maxim Tsiplikov among some draft picks as well. So it looks like Matthew Darche is getting a bit nostalgic for the former Lightning forward, and you know, the New York Islanders are full of overpaid veterans, so he should fit in perfectly there. New Jersey won't be missing Palat all that much, as he was skating on the fourth line, which is as clear an indication as anything of how far his stock had fallen since he signed that massive deal in 2022. And yet another injury that impacts my fantasy team directly. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen left the game early tonight against Toronto after the Austin Matthews 2-1 goal. Colton Ellis relieved him, and they went on to thump the Toronto Maple Leafs 7-4. On the back of an absolutely outrageous 5-point night from Rasmus Dahlin, 3 goals, 2 assists, and 7 shots on goal for 23.5 fantasy points in the Cupful format. Especially after everything he and his wife have been going through recently, you do love to see a great performance from a guy like Rasmus Dahlin. Before we get into the hot streaks here, I wanted to take a quick opportunity here to follow up on Jeremy Versillo's excellent goaltending segment from last week's Short Shifts. And I'm going to start where he started in Edmonton, where Tristan Jarry returned last week from injury. And since his return, Jarry has actually played in all 4 games for the Oilers, getting 3 starts and appearing in relief for Connor Ingram, who got shelled over the weekend against Washington, with Jarry eventually picking up the win. So good for you, Jarry. Jarry did get that 3rd start out of 4 on Monday night, and so with 3 starts to Ingram's 1, it seems to me that Jarry is the starter for now. He hasn't exactly been spectacular since his return, but he's getting the job done for the Oilers, saving them against Washington, like I mentioned, and putting up a quality start with 36 saves on 40 shots and coming out with the win against Anaheim on Monday. Jarry is 96% owned in Cupful and 54% in all Yahoo leagues, so there are certainly leagues where he might be available to you, and like Jeremy said, Ingram is probably a safe drop for you at this point. Another check in the win column for Jeremy was Stuart Skinner, who since the last Short Shifts added another quality start win against Vancouver, which admittedly isn't that hard to do these days. I did pick him up based on that recommendation, so thanks, Jeremy, for your help in me winning my matchup this week. Skinner is also 96% owned in Cupful and 61% in Yahoo, so you may still have the same opportunity that I did over the weekend to grab him. I want to move over to Columbus, where we might still need a bit more data. Elvis Merzlikins was meant to start in that game last night against LA, which was postponed, so it seems possible that he'll get tomorrow's game against the Flyers. Like Jeremy said, this may end up as a 50% tandem, so Jet Greaves owners probably need to start taking some precautions against that eventuality. Hey, Stuart Skinner and Tristan Jarry might be available to you, so get out there and scour the waiver wire. Wanted to finish off here with some original work from me instead of just piggybacking on Jeremy. I am interested in how things are going to go with Buffalo, especially now that UPL looks like he might be missing some time. It seemed like Lyon and UPL were set to split starts, but this becomes quite a bit more murky with Colton Ellis in the picture. Now, I don't think Ellis is that big of a drop from UPL, so we may still see a split of sorts. Buffalo is playing so well that if I could guarantee 2 games from one of their goalies, I'd probably try to do that no matter what. And so a good opportunity to test that presumption is the upcoming Olympic matchup, where there's a good likelihood you can grab a Buffalo goalie and get 4 starts in 6 games over that 2-week matchup. I think at this point I'd probably lean to Alex Lyon since he's the veteran and he's 65% owned in Cupful and only 28% owned in Yahoo. So he might be a sneaky pickup in a non-standard matchup for you. And just circling back to Stuart Skinner here, he seems poised for that same 4 games in 6 over the Olympic matchup. So there's yet another reason for you to pick him up as well. Finishing off here with some hot streaks, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention perhaps one of the hottest players in the NHL over the past week, Beckett Sennecke, who's been having an incredible rookie breakout for the Ducks all season. He did go through a bit of a 3-game point-scoring slump, but broke out of it on Sunday with his first career hat trick, and now owns the rookie goal-scoring lead with 17 goals. He's actually getting the majority of power play time as of late with so many of Anaheim's skilled players out with injury, and he is the absolute offensive engine for this Anaheim team for the time being. Believe it or not, he got 100% of the power play time on ice in Monday's game against Edmonton and contributed 2 power play assists to reward Quenneville's confidence in him. Beckett Sennecke wasn't the only person to benefit from his own additional power play time on ice, as Mikael Granlund turned in his 4th career hat trick entirely on the power play in that game against Edmonton. Obviously, this is not something we can expect to continue season long for Granlund, but he's playing with Sennecke at even strength and on the power play, so he'll be a nice add while the Ducks are missing so many of their skilled players. Another young player that has rediscovered his scoring touch is Morgan Geekie on the Boston Bruins, who has finally broken out of his mid-season malaise with 8 points in his last 8 games, including Tuesday's game against Nashville. 5 of those points are goals, and so we may be seeing the return of early-season Morgan Geekie. He had gone about a month without scoring a goal, and so this is certainly welcome news for Bruins fans and Geekie managers who I'm sure didn't have the intestinal fortitude to drop him after his gangbusters pace to start the season. If you want a piece of him, Elias Lindholm and Pavel Zacha might be your only options, as Lindholm joins him on the power play and at even strength, while Zacha just joins him on the power play. I was hoping there'd be an opportunity to grab one of my favorite Bruins, Marat Huznadinov, but alas, we'll just have to wait for another Marco Sturm roster shakeup to give that one a shot. For those of you in deeper Cats leagues, I did want to shout out Jacob Melanson in Seattle, who has 17 hits in 2 games since being called back up, including 7 in only 7 minutes and 41 seconds of ice time yesterday. He has 83 hits in 17 games. Obviously, this kind of player always has the risk to get sent back down, but the general vibe around fans and beat writers is that the Kraken are better with him in the lineup, so he'd be great for Bangers Cats leagues, obviously with that kind of volume. And I'd probably never hear the end of it from Oilers fans if I didn't mention their back-to-back hat tricks from the defense, with Evan Bouchard scoring his first hat trick in game number 400 for him, followed by Matthias Ekholm scoring a hat trick the next game. It's only the 8th hat trick by an Oilers D-man from Ekholm, and the first time in franchise history that they have had hat tricks by D-men in consecutive games. Is there anything fantasy relevant here? Of course not. Are you going to pick up Ekholm thinking he will do it again? You shouldn't. He said himself, "I don't score much." The man himself is telling you to not expect it to happen again. As for its historical nature, while that is exciting, if you're looking for any further insight on that, I would bet any amount of money that some Oilers fan is going to write into the 32 Thoughts thought line, claiming that this must be the only time in NHL history where this has happened, and then we'll find out that it's happened 40 times, and that the first time was like Red Kelly doing it in 1960. So if you want more conversation like that, I guess listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast, because you won't be getting it here. With that, that's the end of our little spin around the league. Thanks for joining me tonight. If you enjoyed our show, please consider joining the Keeping Karlsson Patreon group at keepingkarlsson.com/patron, where super supporters receive ad-free episodes and you can interact with Brian, Elon, the whole Short Shifts crew, and hundreds of other talented fantasy managers on our active Discord server. Don't forget to check out GameDayTweets.com, which is just the best fantasy hockey website out there. It's a repository of all the relevant tweets from beat writers around the league, including team by team and searchable tweets by player name. So if you're looking for the most recent information about any player, that's your resource. Visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes at Yahoo and Frozen Tools. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach, and until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.
Hey guys, finding the perfect gift for the food lover in your life is easy, thanks to Goldbelly. Goldbelly ships America's most iconic foods, straight from world-famous restaurants right to your door. So if you want to treat someone to Joe's Stone Crab from Miami, Franklin Barbecue from Texas, or desserts from famous foodies like Ina Garten or Martha Stewart, Goldbelly has you covered. Just go to goldbelly.com and for a limited time, get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT. That's promo code GIFT.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.